A number of us in our core group have come together to investigate other options for project delivery. Our traditional process has been based on a contract where we're continuously in dispute and one party against the other and always fighting, and our delivery time is suffering and our quality is suffering, and we're short of manpower. So we need to do something better to deliver better, more fun projects.
You know, we think of collaboration with the team members that we're directly, involved with day to day. But one of our goals with this project is also to share everything we're learning. And of course, we're learning new things every day. I would say to my colleagues, it's almost a radical way or a different way of doing work. So we're committed, to sharing what we're learning. Really, this is what this Lean Summit that's been organized here in the province of Saskatchewan, really with the hope that it would start forming a bit of a nucleus, not just in Saskatchewan, but for the prairie provinces, where the construction industry can start looking at perhaps how can we learn from one another as we're beginning to look at new ways of delivering projects, and in the case of using lean methodology and methods and tools. The reality is this is very hard work.
The ideas of communities of practice actually came out of the original Sutter initiative. So when Sutter decided that it was going to take its entire program lean, there was no community in Northern California that understood what lean project delivery meant or how it could be accomplished. And so as part of that initiative, Sutter Health basically began in Northern California what was called the Lean Coordinators meetings. And it was the individuals with the companies that were working for Sutter that were responsible for implementing lean on those projects that would come together once a month typically and share stories of what they were doing, what they were learning, what worked, what didn't work. And we came to realize that that was a really rich environment to foster a community of learning and to really accelerate the growth of the ideas and the capabilities of the people to deliver those projects using these new ideas. So now that the lean ideas have migrated up here to Canada, the idea is that, again, as you begin to develop practitioners who are interested in developing their capability to deliver projects on a lean basis, they really need a forum to talk to each other and learn from each other so that they can share experience and accelerate the learning here in Canada.
Because I was one of the founders of the Los Angeles Center of Practice for the Lean Construction Institute, and I think what we've found is that when we get together and share stories and we talk about challenges, even in a peer-to-peer sense, in other words, a general contractor talking to another general contractor, we learn a lot from each other, and then we can actually change the industry through that knowledge.
It's a journey. It's not something where you go and you flip a switch and all of a sudden you're now capable of delivering a project on a lean basis. Our Canadian cousins that we've been working with for the last 14 months on this project really have come to understand that there's no recipe book to go out and buy, and you just follow the recipe and now you're able to deliver an ILPD project. Realize you're going to make mistakes and that the goal of lean is to learn from your mistakes and to continuously improve what you're doing is really the key that will help drive lean in Canada.
Our hope is that today with this Lean Summit that it's just the beginning of collaboration in the industry and really trying to transform the way we've been working.
The idea of the construction industry being broken is one that there will be those who will be offended by the comment, and there will be those who will go, yeah, but we're not allowed to admit it in public, and there will be those who will say, I've been waiting to hear that for years. Broken in the sense of relationship, from the point of view that there's a lot of dysfunction, tension and adversity that often comes into most projects. You expect it before you even start. And it's a norm. We've all invented and come up with processes that help us handle the adversity, or CYA in advance. I think what really started to confirm it for me and some of the people I've gotten to know and spent a lot of time with over the last few years is that I have met so many contractors, trade contractors, architects, designers, engineers, and even customers and end users who have said, you know, we could have done a much better job if, and then you can fill in that blank with whatever. in my opinion, the fact that customers continually talk about projects being over budget, too late, the quality it's not what we expected. Any system that can't satisfy the needs of customers has a problem. And the broken nature of the industry isn't just the industry itself. The brokenness goes all the way from the service providers, the vendors, the trade contractors, the consultants, the general contractors, the developers, right through to the customers themselves. There really is no element that is blameless in the whole scenario. I used to get together with people on a regular basis, and off the record, we would have this conversation all the time. We finally said one day, you know what? We've got to stop having this as a therapy session in private, and we need to find a way to make this dialogue an acceptable public matter that we can have as an industry, and start looking for the solutions instead of worrying about the issues and watching this deja vu Groundhog Day experience of the same thing going wrong every time. You almost know when it's going to happen.
My first 25 years in the construction industry were really as a construction lawyer, and I had had the experience of seeing how bad projects turn out, and the disagreements, the litigation, the money that gets spent at the end of the job because the project teams hadn't been successful in delivering the project. And so as we became exposed to lean project delivery, it really opened an opportunity to pursue work in a different way that enabled people to actually produce good projects rather than fight about bad projects.
I think a lot of it is risk. You know, we as groups tend to try and push risk to other people. I, as a general contractor, I don't want any exposure at all to risk, right? So I try and push it to somebody else. And if I'm the owner, I don't want any risk, so I try and push it to somebody else. It kind of sets up this process, well, I'm going to take care of me, and whatever happens to you is your problem.
Now, owners always want to get rid of risk, right? But whenever you say, well, you know, I don't want to take that risk, I want the other person to take the risk. What happens when the other person agrees to take the risk? They charge you for it, don't they? They put the cost of that risk, the burden of that risk, into the money that they're going to charge you to do the work. And typically, that's not transparent either. So you create this lack of transparency, which also then starts to fester in terms of a lack of trust. Ultimately, everybody's kind of pointing the fingers at one another when something goes wrong. Nobody's looking at this as if I fail, we all fail.
What you experience on a traditional job is there really isn't a collective effort at risk mitigation. What there is a collective effort to shift risk to somebody else.
When I started this process in California, escalation for construction projects, healthcare construction projects, was increasing at about, well, over a 3-year period, the cost escalated 60% in 3 years. And that's just unmanageable.
The project delivery process and the industry as a whole had become increasingly dysfunctional. They had developed deep silos over a number of years where individuals for different companies worked separately from one another and often didn't communicate well amongst themselves, and so that there were huge gaps in the understanding of the project team over why something was going to be built, what needed to be built, and how it would actually be put together. So the opportunity that's presented by lean and integrated project delivery is really to enable folks to work together differently throughout the project, from the initial conception of the project through its turnover to the owner, in a way that allows them to make sure that there are no gaps in their common understanding and no significant overlaps in the work that they're doing in order to deliver the project.
It keeps people from taking that real adversarial relationship where I'm going to protect my territory even if it's at your expense. We take the approach that we're going to protect the project, all of us, because we're all invested in the outcome.
So what we find in lean project delivery, when you're integrating the project team and making them play a game that's all for one, one for all, now everybody has a new financial incentive to actually make sure that risk is being identified, that strategies are being developed to mitigate that risk, to address it, and that if circumstances arise where the risk can't be mitigated, that the team circles around to try to address the risk in the most cost-effective and efficient way possible. Because again, now everybody has a consolidated objective of trying to make sure that risk is mitigated and reduced rather than simply shifted off to some other party.
One of the things I heard somebody say many, many years ago, he says, you know, here's the problem. What our customers need is really simple. They need a project on time, on budget, to the right quality. That's all they need. It's not that hard. He says the trouble is when we're selling to them, when we're trying to win their business, we're like, oh, absolutely, yeah, for sure. But as soon as it comes down to the wire, our industry is actually, in most cases, only capable of delivering 2 out of the 3. Because if you want the quality you're telling me you want, it's going to cost you more and it might take longer. If you want it quickly, we're going to have to pay a premium to accelerate the project. If you want to save money, well, we're going to have to cut the quality. We call that value engineering because it sounds more gentle, but it's really devalue engineering. Because if you can't deliver the right value to your customer, they're not going to pay you for doing anything special. So they just rely on low bid. I know I'm going to be disappointed, so why should I spend any more money than I have to?
When you think about value and the definition of value, again, defined by the customer, part of the problem is most of the time our communication isn't clear on any front. So we need to be much more clear about the requests we make and defining our conditions of satisfaction.
I think there was a general dissatisfaction amongst owners, and if you're sensitive to the owners who write our checks, right? If you're sensitive to what they're trying to do, then you have to look at the process and say it's not working. Owners are ending up at the end of the project spending more money and taking longer time to do it than they ever expected. That doesn't work. And it's not sustainable. I don't think the business model is sustainable. I really don't. So at some point, something had to give.
The reality is the customer is often part of the problem. Because in the simplest sense, if they drive, oh, we have to go to low bid, it's the low price only, and then hide behind that procurement, and the main reason they do it is because nobody ever got fired for picking the low bidder. If they turn out to be the wrong partner for the project, well, I was just trying to do the right thing. I was trying to save the taxpayer money. I was trying to save the shareholders money.
I think that in some ways that they were victims of the process. They really didn't understand and usually believed that they should get what they originally wanted for the price that had been committed, and didn't really have a good understanding of why it is that we can hire professionals to deliver these projects, and despite everyone's best efforts, we have bad outcomes.
The owners are saying to us, this doesn't work for us anymore. This current process it doesn't work for us. We have to find a better way. And I think it's really one of those things that you either get on board or you get left behind, because it's going to happen.
Einstein said it really well. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. And that's what we've been doing in both of these industries for a very long time. If you want to change it, look at the foundation upon which it's built.
Think about every project that you ever did that went really well. What were the common themes? And some of them might have been, you worked with people you trusted, you worked with people who were really good at what they did, you worked with an owner who was involved, supportive, active. If you take those 3 things and put them together, you usually can get a really good project, right? And again, I think that this is what we're really trying to do, is we're trying to set the stage so that all of those factors that make a project successful are brought to the front of the process so that we can work through them and deliver exactly what the owner wants, exactly how they want it, for the price they need it delivered for. And I think, if you look back and you say, wow, I've done some projects in my life, they might have been design bid build, or design build, but they all have, the successful ones all have these common elements. It's trust, it's an owner that's willing to be involved, it's a really smart team, people that you like to work with. You put all of those together and man, it's really hard to make the project go poorly, right?
The biggest difference between traditional Canadian project delivery and the lean process is that the lean process engages contractors and designers and the owner equally on a common contract.
We're very focused on the integrated form of agreement that was set up, the legal document, so to speak, that sets up the delivery method. The contract, I think, facilitates the kind of interaction that you need to really make things happen. So I think that's the difference here, is that some of the other projects that are being delivered lean or in an IPD format don't have that same contract structure. The major players in this process who are going to deliver the project, including the general contractors and some of the major trade partners, all have said, you know what, we're going to take some of our profit and we're going to put it at risk. And we're going to put it in a pool, and we're not going to touch that until we know that we can build the project on time and on budget. And if that happens, then we'll be able to have access to our profit, basically. And so, and in addition to that, if we do really well, we also have the opportunity to grow our profit beyond our original margins. So I think that's the big difference, is that because of the way we share risk and we put our profit at risk, the owner looks at us and says, well, okay, if you're willing to put your profit at risk, I'm more inclined to trust you and make sure that, and that way make sure that I get the project that I really wanted to start with.
So lean is the process. BIM is the technology. We didn't have the technological capability to collaborate virtually to the degree just in basic AutoCAD. You had architectural drawings, structural engineers drawings, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, you had sprinkler layouts, you had interiors, you had separate drawings that were generated by separate people and printed out on separate printers. And there was this imagination out there that they will magically line up. If you had a light that you could shine up through these drawings that was bright enough, it was magically going to align. It never did. There are trade contractors that relied on them not lining up because that generated a whole pile of change orders. You can either pay your consultants to solve the problems in advance, or you'll be paying your trade contractors to solve them on site. I guarantee you, however expensive you may think architects are, they're not nearly as expensive as trade crews whose productivity and hours are being spent solving problems that could have been dealt with up front. So you've got lean, the process, BIM, the technology, and IPD, the team structure. Any one of these is great in their own right, but you put them together in one blended strategy and you leverage, BIM makes it much more effective to be lean. IPD allows collaboration to leverage lean principles much better than a bunch of silos can. And we really I look at them as the three legs of the stool. There's a number of practitioners in the US who have been doing this. The guinea pigs have already stepped up to the plate and taken the first few hits in the learning process and have proved what does and does not work, have published the results, have begun to develop the best ways to do this. No, it's not a dream, because it's now been practiced and the results have been published. When you read an ENR magazine and you read an article which actually published the results of a Sutter project, they saved $30 million on a $250 million hospital with no reduction in the programming for what the customer needed. 72% complete and only 23 change orders. 90% improved productivity by major subtrades. 99% in accordance with the model for some of the mechanical work. When you see these published results, it's no longer a theory. It's not a dream. It's not a bunch of people holding hands and saying kumbaya. It's an industry growing up and realizing there's a better way.
We've really found that delivering these projects works, and we have the metrics to prove that. I mean, we have the data that says, you know, we did deliver it on time for less money than normally would have cost, and it was a high value building to the owner. There is now a mountain of evidence that's beginning to build that this process really does work. If you're interested in finding out about it, it's really easy to go look and do some poking around and say, hey, you know, does this work? Another example would be that we had been teaching these men and women about how to do this process, but they had never really been on a project like this before. So we took a bunch of them and we went to Sacramento to one of our projects and said, okay, this is one that's halfway through. And we showed them how it worked on a daily basis. I mean, real life, real time. You can touch it, you can feel it, you can taste it, it's right there. And I think that's really important, is to be able to make that kind of real real-time connection to the process and see that it works. Once you've done that, then I think you have a lot more confidence to take the risk, so to speak, of trying something new.
It was only 13 months ago that we actually hired the design construction team to begin this project. And now here they are in the ground doing construction. From initial approval to go ahead with design to construction. So this is a phenomenal process. We have other projects that they're working on 3.5 years. They're still just doing working drawings. That's basically where it's at. I mean, this is so much quicker, so much faster that you'd have to say it's almost phenomenal. The speed of the project is so much faster, anywhere from 2 times to 3 times faster than before. The cost of the project, it's often quoted as being 15% less, but I've now seen costs on other projects where costs are estimated being double what they are on this particular project.
This conference was originally called Lean is the Next Big Wave. Hop on that wave or get left behind. In the Outliers book, Malcolm Gladwell said you can get 10,000 hours of practice in and become a master, and that opens up huge opportunities. Steve Jobs. So that is why you want to get on board right now. Lean is here. You're in the early adopter stage. Anybody, contractors, architects, engineers, contractors, you have a huge opportunity to become a master and have a very successful business. That is why you want to get on board right now.
Do kind of like a self-quiz, and if you honestly believe that your traditional method of delivering a capital project is working for you. When I ask that question to myself, and when I ask it to even most of my colleagues, they all agree that it's not working.
I think that without it, our industry is doomed, at risk of sounding dramatic. I think our industry is doomed to suffer eroding margins, increased risk, and increased bad behavior until it really can barely exist.
Okay, so you get a higher performance building at less cost, with less stress, with the best people. So there's no negative.
If you don't get involved, you really run the risk of getting left behind. If you don't get involved and learn these technologies and techniques, you're going to find that you're going to be looking at a smaller and smaller market share. Because if owners are telling us, look, you have to find a better way to support our needs and our wants, and if we don't react to that, they're going to do something else. I mean, I'm not even really sure what that is, but they're going to find a different way. And I think it's up to us as the experts in the industry to say, look, we think we have a better way to do it. What do you think? Let's try it. Let's give it a go.
I would say to anybody really like vested deeply into the current paradigm, that they're vested in something that ultimately is a dinosaur.
If building owners or people that are doing projects don't get on board with lean project delivery, they're missing the opportunity to have higher performance at less cost and less risk, and actually having more fun. See this gray hair here? That all came from doing traditional project delivery, not IPDs. So that's what they're going to miss out on. It is a way better experience that gets you higher value at less cost. Not much more to say.
Here in Saskatchewan, I think the ministry was looking at it saying, we're not getting the buildings that we wanted. If we get them on budget, then we don't get all of the building that we originally planned. We're making sacrifices. So there's got to be a better way to deliver the project. And I think when they looked at integrated project delivery and looked at some of the different projects that have been done around the world, they said, geez, you know, maybe this really makes sense. We got to give this a shot. Maybe there's a better way to deliver the project so that we can have high value, that we can deliver the project on the time, and that we can get exactly the building that we need without sacrificing one to benefit the other too.
We're building a new hospital facility to replace an aging, the current hospital in our community in the city of Moose Jaw. It's a regional hospital that doesn't just serve this city, it serves the surrounding rural municipalities. And so really this is what this is all about. It's ultimately providing the best healthcare experience to our patients and the communities that we serve.
One of the things we really wanted to do was look at new construction processes. And IPD was the obvious solution.
There was a lot, if I can call it, research, and then when we were convinced that there is a better way, we then began to gather that information, share it with leaders and decision makers, convincing them that give us an opportunity to try this new method, and because we believe it will ultimately provide the best value to the patients that we serve.
One of the big things that you see in other projects is cost goes up as the project continues. That comes from both the users, but it also comes from the contractors and the designers, because they're all tied into the more a project costs, the more money they all make. So there's sort of a built-in, let's just all, this thing goes higher and higher, we make more and more money. This project is the first project I've seen where the designers and the contractors actually make more money as the costs go down. 100% the opposite from most projects.
A building's less than 5% of your cost of running an organization out of that facility over its life cycle. In healthcare, it's probably less than 1%. So where should you be spending your money? Where should you be investing? That's what an enlightened customer knows and understands, and that's what Five Hills is doing. It's something that we'll look back on, and I think it will be a tipping point for change in Canada. And you know, the fact that they're a public entity, and one of the classic frequently used excuses is, well, how could a public entity do this? So here we are in Canada with the first rail project that's really aggressively following lean and has made significant change management happen to make it work and make it possible. And they're a public organization under more scrutiny, under more levels of accountability, and yet they're out there in front, showing the private sector what they should be doing every day.
This particular engagement is fascinating to me because while I was at Sutter Health, I helped develop the concept of integrated project delivery, but Sutter was a private healthcare system. This is a public system. The government is also involved in this. And to the government's credit, and I think this needs to be said, this government was visionary enough and courageous enough to say, we want to take advantage of these ideas too. I think that's phenomenal.
For me, at least, it breaks down into three broad categories. The first is designing the operation. So in this case, working with Five Hills to help them design how they want to deliver healthcare in the future. The next step then is designing the building, designing the facility in a way that supports the operation. And then the third connector would be designing the production system, the way that the work is actually going to be physically constructed in order to deliver the optimum value to the owner with the minimum waste. So again, we try to bring lean thinking to all three phases, to the operations design, to the facility design, and to the production system design.
This particular region, FHHR's region, is really working hard to operate a hospital in a lean fashion. In other words, to shortcut it, just to say a more efficient fashion, right? And to do that, they've involved the people who are actually going to do the work, the nurses, the patients even are invited to the process, to design how the hospital actually works. And then we build the building that supports that operation. As opposed to building a building and saying, okay, do whatever you do once you get in it, we actually design the building so that it supports the processes that they've designed beforehand.
It really resonates with me because we talk about having the patient at the center, but often in the past when we were approaching, you know, how to solve problems like building a new healthcare facilities, we maybe didn't necessarily involve all the participants to the extent that we have with this project. And there was a lot of synergy in having the patient in the room. And our rule was, when in doubt, let's ask the patient, let's ask the family member. And having them participate every step of the way is just invaluable, because you truly get a sense then of what the patient really needs and what the patient really values.
And to be quite honest, the involvement between the contractors and the designers is something that doesn't happen on a traditional project. You have designers doing their design, then you have the builders coming in after, bidding on the project, and coming in after and building the project. So having them working together during the design process means that once the construction starts, it's going to go much more smoothly. There won't be all the interference, conflicts in the construction process. You won't find this is in the way of something else. You know, that often happens, and that becomes a change order, causes more expense.
What's so different about this project is that you work in a very integrated team. The team actually physically meets and works together and shares the same space for the duration of the project. as an owner representative, we're involved in every decision that's made regarding the project, more so than we even envisioned.
My hat is off to them every time I think of them, because what they're doing is remarkable. And the rest of the world should be watching this, because this is something that no other governmental agency in the United States, no other governmental agency in Canada for that matter, no other governmental agency that I'm aware of has even remotely considered the idea of incorporating lean not only into the project planning and the project design concepts, which I think are very important, really the most important proposition from a cost perspective for sustainable healthcare going forward, but they also took it into the way the buildings get built.